but it all started somewhere. So that's where I'd like to begin, is where did you begin? How this all started?
Well, I often say that my journey started with me rescuing myself.
Okay.
I didn't wake up one day and go, I really want to be an inspirational speaker. I want to transform lives. I woke up one day and I was broken. And that was about 1993, 1994. And I really needed to find tools and techniques so that I can transform my life. And I felt like at the time, more importantly, transform my newborn son's life, because I had just brought him into the world, and I didn't bring him into a pretty situation. It wasn't so crazy dismal that you would think it was chaotic, but it was. It was a life of struggle and scarcity and lack, but it was a normal. It was my norm. How you can have insanity occur, but it's your norm, so it doesn't feel like it's something so different. Well, I recognized that I needed to be my own rescue, and I recognized that particularly when we were on government assistance. So I had to have food stamps to feed him. And one particular time when I didn't have money to buy him Pampers. And that was, I talk about that the most because that was that moment when I said, okay, I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this experience. I'm done with living inside of struggle and scarcity. I had to wrap him in a towel for 2 days. And I didn't have a lifestyle where I knew what transformation was. I knew what faith was. I knew what spirituality was, but I didn't know what transformation was. I knew what spiritual awareness was, but I didn't know what self-development was. I didn't know that focusing on my spirituality and worshiping and honoring God was important, but it was very different than finding out my limiting beliefs, pushing past where I would normally stop, confronting my own fears. That was very different. I grew up thinking they were the same. And when I realized that as much as I developed my spiritual awareness, I had to develop my personal awareness. And I began this quest, and I began this journey. And it was kind of scary for me because in an African-American community, that's not the norm. That our norm is church, our norm is faith, our norm is family. It wasn't the norm for me to focus on me. Matter of fact, it seemed selfish. It seemed self-indulgent. It seemed anti-cultural, anti-family. And yet I had to recognize that if I was going to love my family more, I had to first love me more. And if I was going to give my family more, I had to first give me more. And I felt like a unicorn. I felt like a unicorn, very different, very odd, and yet I went out and I adopted people and I asked people to adopt me that knew more about it than I did. And over the years, I first healed. Then I began to believe. Then I began to take action. Then I began to transform. And once I did that for myself, then I began to go, how can I serve others through this same experience?
I think you brought out several good points, but I think this is also a misconception because I also have experienced this where you are having a spiritual faith and you're involved with a lot of people. And sometimes it's very narrow where this should heal and do everything. And it should be enough. Yeah. And that's not the case always. You do need to work on that inner self. And I think that's why God provides people like you to help people like us to realize that we...
I don't believe it's ever that way, Laura. I don't believe you can ever do any one thing unilateral and get a 360 result. I think that if you want a 360 life, you have to have a 360 application. Focusing on your spirituality and saying God will provide doesn't prevent you from having to be fiscally responsible over here and balance your bank account.
Yes.
Saying I have the faith of a mustard seed over here doesn't change the fact that you need to say, I apologize. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Let's try this again over there. Mm-hmm. And so I believe anytime we live unilateral, we set ourselves up for a fake, false victory. What's actually known as a Pyrrhic victory. And a Pyrrhic victory is spelled P-H-Y-R-R-I-C. And a Pyrrhic victory is when you win, you're successful. But the cost of your success outweighs the success itself. That's huge.
That is huge. And now we are going to get in a little bit about the success, the secrets to your success and how to do that. But another point I want to bring out where you were talking about it was action, is taking action. Yes. And that's such a big point because, you know, so many people, even I saw a couple of videos of you talking about the secret where, you know, if you don't take action, it's not going to do any good. Is that correct?
It's just wishful thinking. Like when you don't take action, it's just wishful thinking. Like Joan Baez says, the antidote for despair is action. Mm-hmm. Lisa Nichols adds, the prescription for success is action. So how is it that the antidote for something you don't want and the prescription for something you do want is the exact same thing, action? That speaks to the power of action. People ask me all the time, how did you get there? People pay me all the time to show them how I got there. People interview me all the time asking me, how did I get here? And I just believe that we don't put enough stock in action. My answer is, my life is different from most for one simple reason. I was in more action. That's it. There's no magical formula. There's no, ingredient that will let you off the hook and make me special. It just doesn't happen. I'm an ordinary woman. I'm not an extraordinary woman. I'm an ordinary woman who's smart enough to make extraordinary decisions every day.
I like that. That's really good.
Because that makes us all alike. When you make me extraordinary, it lets you off the hook. When you make me extraordinary, it puts me on a mountaintop. I don't want to live on a mountaintop. And I also want everyone else to know that I got here climbing the same way you can climb.
There was something else that you had said, I don't remember where I saw it, but you said, I am making a decision today to not play small, to not show up small. I love that because, that I think that is what we all do, is sometimes we play small so the other person doesn't feel bad.
We often shrink ourselves and dim our lights so that others around us won't feel insecure. Yeah. We dim our lights so that we can fit in. We dim our lights and shrink our lights and hold back our brilliance so that we're accepted, so that we can manage other people's perception of us. We do it for so many reasons because we are a tribal culture. We're a tribal culture. We want to be together, especially as women. As women, oh my God, everything is about the time together. Everything is about the socializing. Everything is about the connectivity. And it's that case for men as well. But for women, it's socially acceptable for us to say it out loud. And so we do things to fit in, even to the detriment of our own light, to the detriment of our own calling, to the detriment of our own purpose that's placed on our lives. We place connection more important with obedience. We place connection to be more important with surrendering to the greatness in us, sharing the greatness in us, sharing the brilliance in us. And here's the tragedy, Laura. We sacrifice those things for the sake of connection, when in fact, if we did more of us, we do more of you, when I do more of me, for a moment, there's a disruption. When we're giving notice to the people around us, there's a disruption. But after the disruption occurs and people settle into really seeing you for you, they settle into really getting that you're going to do you at all costs. When they settle into, oh my God, this is her real light. This is who she is. When they settle into that, mind you, there is some disruption during that time. But once they transcend that disruption and they settle into your greatness, all of a sudden the connection is even greater. It's even greater. And matter of fact, the connection goes further. I have millions of people following me because I transcended through that uncomfortable period where I was considered odd for a long time. I got this dream. You can't see the dream. Who gave me the dream? How am I going to fund the dream? Who's having this dream with me? You know what I mean? And I'm bringing a little baby along the way on this dream. So there was some moments of questioning, a concern, probably a few family meetings about me, all of the above, you know, and then transcending it. And oh, by the way, it took several years. It didn't happen overnight.
Did they come along with you, or did they just really accept you now?
They just kind of let me go. They let me go and do that thing I was doing, and just loved me consistently. Didn't necessarily cheerlead for me out loud, because they didn't quite know what they were cheering for.
Okay.
Because I was creating something ambiguous. I was, you know, and here's what I learned. If other people, Laura, if other people don't get your vision, it's because God didn't give your vision to them.
Oh, you know what? That is very powerful.
It's one of the most riveting things that I feel every time I share it, because I lived it. Like, other people won't get your vision. They won't get your vision, but that's because your vision is in you. God didn't give them your vision. God gave you your vision, and your job is to birth it, to nurture it, to feed it, to give it what it needs, to put passion in it, to plan, to strategize, to be respectful of it, to be mindful of it, to give it the time that it needs, and then to birth it. And when you birth it, then the world gets to see it. But we want people to support it even before it's out there, really.
That's true. I can't even think of how many times I've tried all these new things and so involved and so excited, and people look at me like I am crazy. So I appreciate what you just said, because that is true. And I have to say it's really true about the summit as well, because it was given to me, but I'd be honestly, I didn't want to do it because I thought there's no way. There's just way too much with all this. And to my surprise, all these people have shown up and just really supported it. In every way, God has made this happen. I can't even tell you the miracles to make this whole summit take place.
Right.
So I understand that.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, in my book, Abundance Now, which you know about, and the book it's my best piece of work ever. In Abundance Now, I talk about how I had to do it alone for a while. I talk about what team looked like. I talk about how I had to build relationships. I talk about how I had to release some unhealthy relationships that were literally choking my dream, because they could only see me in that light. They couldn't see me in this light. And that in order for me to move forward, I had to agree to love them, but to love them from a distance.
Okay.
So you know, in Abundance Now, I really talk about what did it go from learning how to stand up, to learn how to run, to learn how to soar.